Welcome to the 6th episode of MarketSHARE and the first New York exclusive episode, connecting the world of real estate and delivering insights from the industry's greatest game changers and thought leaders. My name is John Marino, president of Marino PR. Special welcome to our sponsor, Chatterson, with headquarters in Alberta, Canada. A big thank you to our media sponsor, PropMoto, and our industry partners, Informa, NIOP, the Real Estate Development Institute, Urban Analytics, Chatterson, and the Urban Land Institute. Don't forget to subscribe or visit marketshare.tv to view previous and upcoming episodes. Our topic today is how to best market your property as New York City gets back to work. All our panelists today are New York City-based real estate marketing gurus who are in the trenches marketing properties with the goal of retaining existing tenants and attracting new ones. With cities coming to a standstill over recent months, our panelists, like other real estate pros, are trying to assess what the real estate market, the economy, and the city itself will look like months and even years from now. As companies welcome their employees back to the office, how has real estate, and in turn its marketing, paved the way for that re-entry? With that, I would like to introduce today's host, Lauren Schram. Lauren is a senior director here at Marino and a former veteran journalist. Thanks for hosting today, Lauren. Please, welcome.
Thanks, John, and thanks everyone for joining us today. Let's introduce our panelists. Michael Mignosi is the Director of Marketing at the Moinian Group. Head of Marketing for the Moinian Group, a New York-based national real estate developer, landlord, lender, and venture capitalist. He is an experienced marketing professional with a diverse history in real estate through past experiences spanning across development, brokerage, and brand agencies. He is skilled in brand strategy, marketing, advertising, and public relations, social media, and architecture and design. Welcome to MarketSHARE, Michael.
Thanks for having me, Lauren.
Next up, we have Amanda Gluck, who is the marketing manager at Stellar Management. Amanda is the director of marketing and PR for Stellar Management, one of New York's premier owners and operators of residential and commercial real estate. Stellar focuses on real estate acquisitions, development, and property management, and its portfolio contains over 12,000 apartments in 100 buildings in New York City and Miami. Amanda has a breadth of experience in marketing and public relations and is also skilled in social media and event planning. Great to have you, Amanda.
Thanks, happy to be here.
Next, we have Lauren Danziger, the Chief Marketing Officer at Industry City, a 16-building, 6 million square foot mixed-use complex spanning 35 acres on the waterfront in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. To date, the complex has included over $400 million of infrastructure improvements, the addition of destination courtyards, experience-driven dining, retail, and other amenitization and event programming. At Industry City, Lauren is responsible for the overall marketing and brand strategy, driving foot traffic and brand awareness. Thanks for joining us, Lauren.
Thanks for having me.
First, I'd like to begin on the topic of office marketing and the adaptation to current market realities. The pandemic has revealed that remote work is better than anticipated, and many large companies, such as Twitter, have announced that they plan to implement remote work policies post-pandemic. Let's talk about how you are marketing properties to existing and future tenants. Lauren, Industry City has a robust tenant roster with companies across a myriad of industries. How have you adapted your marketing efforts throughout this time? And are you still actively leasing to new tenants, or have you changed your focus to retaining tenants?
It's a great question. The first part, look, I mean, when the pandemic started and we all went into quarantine, we didn't want to appear tone deaf. The focus was on everyone's health and safety. So marketing wasn't necessarily a priority. We wanted to make sure that our existing tenant base felt safe, secure, that we were, operating as a destination that was living up to its obligations from a public health standpoint. So, that was step one. And then as time went on, we began to reevaluate what our voice and what our place in the market was. And I think that's still evolving right now as people are looking at work, looking at office space a little differently. But the good news on our end was that we had a leasing velocity during the first few months of this pandemic, particularly in ground floor retail. We did some pretty big deals over the last 3 months. And we've also seen an uptick in businesses looking to either leave Manhattan or to have satellite offices. And, the nature of Industry City having open space and flexible work environments with a campus nature, windows that open, on-site parking, it's made us, I think, a real viable candidate for people looking to change their office strategy. But additionally, we are a community, so we've been doubling and redoubling our efforts on supporting our existing tenant base and making sure that as they're impacted, that we can support them through that. Traditional marketing hasn't been a huge factor in the last 4 months. I think we can all probably speak to that, but supporting our tenant base has been where our marketing efforts have been, but not just marketing efforts, really just supporting them however they need, whether it be producing a webinar for them on, the PPP efforts and financing and getting them through the challenges that we're all facing right now.
So Michael, Moinian has a vast residential portfolio. What are the pain points that are unique to marketing properties at this time, and how is Moinian adjusted to them?
So to Lauren's point, with regards to traditional marketing, we've had this major switch where on the residential rental side, we've always focused on 80% acquisition of new rentals, as the average residential lease is probably around 2 years, and really focusing on re-engaging our current community, making sure everyone's safe and healthy. And then on the 20% side, that was now kind of flipped, where we have 20% on the acquisition side. I think some of the biggest pain points or challenges for us have been, these ever-changing policies, guidelines for reentry, ensuring the safety of our tenants, where I'm not focusing so much on getting new clients as much, but more so creating safety flows in the lobbies and common areas where people are actually going, understanding and trying to figure out what is actually safe in the amenity spaces of our buildings, where, in New York, it's challenging to enforce social distancing because 6 feet apart is sometimes the size of someone's apartment, especially in a smaller gym or a lounge. So for us, it's, kind of navigating this new landscape and figuring out what is safe based on CDC and state guidelines, and then taking it with a grain of salt with what our tenants actually want. So engaging them with surveys and, figuring out this new path that has no precedent to it. So I think even with this week alone, understanding what Trump is saying in regards to not allowing new students, foreign students with visas, if college courses remain digitally focused, I think that will have, a major effect on our residential side, where we do have a lot of foreign students, specifically in some of our midtown buildings. So I think, us trying to pivot and figure things out quickly and in an agile and efficient way is, definitely the biggest challenge we're facing these days.
Yeah, I just want to say, I want to echo what Michael said about basically communications, directional signage. All these things have become such a greater focus so that people who do engage with our properties feel somebody somewhere is looking out for them. They're like subtle messages or not so subtle messages about what's going on, but about health and safety versus rent here, lease here, spend time here, which is, I think, a huge shift for all of us in terms of marketing.
Thank you. Yeah. Sounds like for landlords, it's important to show that you're caring and that you're showing you're caring through these things.
Well, it's important to show up aware and with a sense of something greater, I think, than just the singular self sort of generated, this is what we're about. We're all about leasing, right? It's about being part of the greater universe right now, which is struggling with external factors that we've never seen.
Right. Especially, I think, on the residential side, when all we really have as individuals or families and friends is our home right now. It's the only thing that we have. So I think fostering this safe environment will gain us better and bigger rewards than just trying to go out and get the next fish.
Amanda, Stellar has residential and retail properties. How much of your efforts have you spent on marketing to existing tenants versus potential tenants, and how is that different than in the past?
Echoing what both Michael and Lauren said, our number one priority at the beginning of the pandemic and up until very recently was messaging, getting the right signage and communication to our tenants to make sure everyone was safe, everyone knew the correct way to go about their day, because as everyone knows, it was kind of changing constantly, whether you were wearing a mask, whether you could be with people outside of your family. It was just very confusing and a lot of messages. So we were all of our marketing efforts really at the beginning of this went to talking to our current tenants, making sure they felt safe, comfortable. If they did need to move out, working with them to make sure they were working with the correct movers and making sure that everyone else in the buildings felt safe. We also found that a lot of tenants were choosing to not move out and we were working with them to extend leases to make sure that people felt comfortable. It still is and has been a very scary time, and forcing people to move was and is never our intention. We want people to be safe and happy, and being safe at home is a privilege, and we did not want to make anyone have to leave, of course. But our strategy for marketing has been constantly shifting, as it always does. But as retail starts opening up a bit in New York City and as offices start opening up, we've put a ton of effort into changing floor plans, changing flows with elevators. There's having entrance doors and exit doors, minimizing the amount of deliveries that come upstairs. There's been a ton of effort put into making sure that people felt safe at home, but now that they feel safe going back to work, where, as everyone knows, we're used to spending a lot of time. While we may not be spending a ton of time in the office for the foreseeable future, we do think that the office market will always be incredibly important, and making that feel like a safe environment for people is right now our number one priority.
What are some new ways you are incorporating technology into your marketing strategies, and how do you foresee those becoming long-term ways of communicating?
I think one of the positive things to come out of this pandemic has been that we've incorporated a lot of new technology into our leasing. We've started doing 3D tours for our vacant units with Matterport, which is something that we had always kind of meant to roll out, but with the urgency of the pandemic, kind of kicked us into gear with that. And that has been amazing. And we've also started rolling it out to our commercial spaces as well. It's been an amazing resource and a great way to get a detailed look at the space and save a lot of people additional time. I think that it will never replace seeing something in person, touching, feeling, looking, experiencing, but it is a great first step. We've seen a ton of positive impact from this.
Very cool. Michael, so let's talk about the Sky, which is known for, this fabulous rental building in Manhattan that's known for all its amazing amenities. You have the city's first lifetime athletic club that features a multi-level athletic club, water club and spa, lap pool, NBA regulation size basketball court, 2 zero-edge outdoor pools, and Life Cafe. Additionally, residents also enjoy an in-house lifestyle and tech concierge, pet spa, bike valet, and more. Did you use virtual tools to provide leasing tours of the units as well as the amenity spaces? And how were you able to sell those spaces when they were shut down in real life?
So yeah, it's definitely a really challenging experience that we've had to deal with at Sky, because the number one selling point of this building, of course, they're gorgeous apartments and you have views, but it's 70,000 square feet of amenities. So for us to have to pivot that has been, definitely challenging, especially because Lifetime, a national operator, operates the amenities, which we're pretty fortunate to have, because they're experts in this and they're the ones re-entering in every other state in the country. So I think by the time New York re-enters the amenity space and gyms, I think we'll be very fortunate to have them and their safety and security. But for us, virtual tours is like I said earlier, has always been something of our wheelhouse. We have every line in that building and almost every apartment, which is 1,175 units, 360 shots. So we have a combination of Matterport and GeoCV tours. We have already, Lifetime has I think about 2 years ago, did the 360 tours of the amenity spaces, which you can find on Lifetime. You could, if you search it on Google, they'll have through the Google VR tours, you can access it there. So I think we've been okay in that sense. And I think one of the more surprising things that I've seen is kind of how well we've been transacting completely virtual. I personally love the virtual tours, but I would need to see a home before I rent it or buy it. I don't think I'd be able to do this totally sight unseen, which is something that I feel like New York has always kind of been shielded against. But we've been doing, I would say 60 to 70% of our deals fully virtual. So that's everything from the tours that are VR tours. We can have one of the agents alone in the apartment doing FaceTime tours, all the way through lease execution. So, we're fortunate in that sense. I'm hopeful that eventually we'll go back to more of a conventional or historic leasing mindset. But we have that buffer should this be something long term.
That's a tremendous figure. Amanda, I'm curious, are you guys doing deals virtually? Have you been doing them as well?
Here at Stellar, we have been doing a ton of deals virtually from start to finish. We've also had leasing agents, alone, of course, in the units, FaceTiming tenants after they've seen virtual tours. We have done 70 to 80% of our lease ups since quarantine have been completely virtual.
So, maybe you feel like you've already answered this, Lauren, but at Industry City, Industry City is known as, Michael had said, sort of has become synonymous with creativity. And you kind of addressed how some of the tenants were using technology and how you've been able to promote that and support them. But when you've had, Industry City has a mix of essential and non-essential businesses as tenants, how has that played a part in the marketing?
The narrative stories, the storytelling of our tenancy has always been, I think, the primary driver of our marketing. We tell those stories, right? And I think that is both, we're talking digitally here, and so social media is huge for us. And we doubled down on that again during Corona. But I think for us as a property that in and of itself, the people, the tenants, both ground floor and upper floor, and the people who visit IC regularly, that's the soul of our community and that's the soul of the property. So in their absence, it's been a test for us on how to continue to build that message and continue to build that community during this time when we're not on property. So, looking at digital programming, not unlike what Michael was speaking about, but we looked at what works best for us on a regular given day, non-pandemic, and saw, could we bring that to life digitally? Some of it's worked, some of it hasn't. Some of our messaging has had to change a bit. There's sensitivities that we didn't have before. So thinking about that messaging, regardless of whether or not it's well-intentioned, right? Everything requires a second set of eyes, a different perspective, and looking through it with a lens of greater sensitivity. So we definitely have been using our digital platforms to communicate. I wouldn't even say more than ever. We're just trying to make sure that the narrative storytelling comes through, that what we're talking to our public about is about the businesses of IC. So that for us didn't really change. And I think it was the bedrock of what made our social and what makes our marketing so compelling. It's the authentic story of the IC tenant.
That's making me wonder if you guys are comfortable answering any lessons learned. What are the biggest lessons that you've learned through this time?
I think Lauren brought up a really good point with regards to how much to communicate. I think, as a landlord, it's challenging because, while not wanting to incur certain liabilities because we're not the CDC, we're not the experts. The CDC and the state government and city government are the experts, the ones who should be putting out the guidelines. So I think, how this level of how much to communicate more or less has been, I think, one of the biggest hurdles to get over. And, it's not something that I don't want to, as a residential building, do you want to hear every day, multiple times a day from your building as to, safety guidelines, what's going on. I think it's safe to say that all of our inboxes have been flooded with email marketing since the start of the pandemic. The amount of times I've had to unsubscribe from things that I, historically love, like restaurants and certain brands and groups that, I would read every once in a while, I am now flooded and inundated with all these messages that I don't necessarily find to be helpful in any sense, and I don't want to flood the market and make the important messages less important by over communicating. So I think that's something that we've learned a lot on, and we're continuing to learn.
Adding to what Michael said, we found at Stellar that in addition to the struggle of whether to over communicate, we found that our tenants wanted us to get really involved in the minutia of their day-to-day lives, making sure that we're monitoring elevators, making sure that no delivery people are coming in. And we've found an interesting dynamic between us wanting to make sure that the correct government officials are getting their points across and they're the ones leading the charge in this. We found that tenants are really deferring to us as property owners to say, this is how you're supposed to act. And they want us to almost monitor 24/7 hallways and elevators. And it's been a struggle to encourage good behavior versus saying, we are not police officers. We are not in charge of regulating people and what they do day to day. All we can do is explain what the CDC has put out there, what our state and local governments have mandated, and encourage that good behavior.
For our communications, absolutely, we talked about that, or we directed our tenants and public to the right links. But I guess when I'm talking about our communications, it's been much more about support. Like our communications, our social media aren't telling the things that we just referenced here. They're telling the stories of the tenants. So what we did see in the lessons learned there were, even in that, to Michael's point, unsubscribing from newsletters. When digital communications became our only form, our only touch point, there were no more in-person interactions. I think everyone went, whew, and you felt like your inbox was a place of stress and attack for a different reason than it was before, because there was so much. But our goal was, you can now support these businesses with gift cards, or we did a really interesting pivot with when all of our restaurants closed. We partnered with Operation Feed, which was this one woman in her apartment who saw that all of her favorite restaurants were closed and that hospital workers and frontline workers needed meals. So we were working to tell the stories of our restaurants that we got to reopen, make some money, make these meals you could donate to. Those sorts of communication messages were what were resonating versus telling people what they were already hearing from 18 other sources, or telling people, come watch our digital yoga. The stuff that people wanted to hear was something that made them feel good. So I think for us, you asked about lessons. It was, make sure you're communicating information that is specific to you, feels full of soul. You still have to do the things that everyone else are doing. You have to send out that message about what operations look like in the new world, in the new world order. But for us, the communication message that came through was find a way to tell everyone what they've been missing, to communicate that authentic community. But it took us a while and we had some missteps. But once we started going with programmatically doing things, whether they were digital or, like I said, getting our businesses back to work to do the good frontline work, that stuff started to resonate again with our community. And that's the story we told, is the point.
So looking back over the past 4 months, although our daily lives have been interrupted, it seems as though most companies have fairly easily adapted to remote work between the tech and social media, but there's no doubt that things have changed. So Amanda, how has the new normal changed the way you measure marketing key performance indicators, or KPIs? Is it the same as before, or are you setting new standards for measurement?
At Stellar Management, and I think like everyone in the world right now, we've just been trying to slow down a bit and be kinder to ourselves, which I think is an important takeaway from the pandemic. not expect the exact same productivity and KPIs, and to just give ourselves some time to adapt, which I think is truly an important takeaway for everyone in the pandemic. We always want heads in beds. We always want to move our retail and commercial spaces, but we have certainly shifted our KPIs to match what we're seeing in terms of an appetite for real estate right now.
Michael, same question. What has Moinian experienced, and how have your KPIs changed since the onset of the pandemic?
So at the Moinian Group, we have a pretty diverse portfolio across, hotels that we've developed and are third-party managed, residential rental buildings, offices around New York and LA. And I think each kind of segment within our portfolio has really changed their KPIs. I think on the residential side, it's, what Amanda was saying is being a little bit kinder, and while we still obviously need to be renting apartments and filling vacancies, we're doing it at a softer pace that is trying to be much more transparent. I think one of the biggest changes that residential has been facing is because we're all digital and we're all online every day, we're seeing engagement with our digital advertising, our websites, our reviews are up by like 70% on average across the board. And so focusing on what a KPI is, which historically is converting into a tour from the digital sense or signing that lease, is now where is this person who is interested in the property looking at? Are they reviewing the Google reviews? Because I think reviews have become a major kind of focus for us across the board. I think people are online reading the reviews and studying more, so we have to be more on point in every aspect of our day-to-day operations and development. So that's been a big one. I think social media has also played a very important role for us, both in the advertising and digital media sense, where we have a pretty robust advertising plan that spreads across either neighborhood focused, building focused, price point or size focused, and retargeting people who are interested, and as well as acquiring new ones, but then adjusting that because of all of these day-to-day policy changes. We can't focus so much on local markets. We have to broaden the horizons. I think on the corporate side, we're trying to be a little bit more kind and neutral because as a landlord, you don't want to have too much of a voice, not in the brand sense, but more, in what's happening in politics right now. I think what we try to do is foster, a neutral and safe environment for people to create their own voices, not necessarily put what we want as a corporate brand and convince them to aspire to be. So that's been a major point for us. And then I think, drilling down into that, which is less corporate and B2B, focusing B2C on renters and our building specific social media platforms, getting as much content out there as we can that's not inundating or, flooding people's feeds, getting stuff where people can see what certain corners of an apartment may look like, or certain vignettes and moments, and not just your conventional, here's your living room and kitchen shot, but, seeing what the day-to-day life is through social media influencers, which has been a huge advantage to us. Specifically at Sky, which is kind of known for its, as you said earlier, its glitz and glam through influencers. We've, recently teamed up with Jen Selter, who has an audience of, I think it's like 13 million, and she just moved in last week. So her first post was yesterday, and I was just looking at the demographics before this, and it reached 25,000 people in less than 24 hours, of which we've had 4,000 engagements or actions taken just from her one Instagram post, which was a sunset time lapse of New York, where people have either clicked on Sky's Instagram profile, clicked on Moinian's website, looked up the directions. So I think that's been very helpful to us, and I'm looking forward to kind of progressing that, because I am someone who hasn't historically loved influencer marketing because it is harder to quantify. It's a lot of it is kind of, more notoriety than quantification of converted deals. But, I think it's important to pick your influencer wisely, is like focusing on their demographic. What are they doing for you? So for us, we like someone who creates a lot of content. So, capturing these moments and things that we can keep and then reuse and recycle is how we kind of find value in influencer marketing.
Yeah, the emphasis on reviews and social media is really interesting. And Lauren, I'd love to hear from you. Industry City has obviously a strong presence on social media. How have you been able to unify the voices of all your tenants' businesses on your social media channels?
I don't know if it's been about unifying the voice, but I keep coming back to just telling stories, making sure that people don't forget these businesses exist, that they stay top of mind, was our priority before Corona and remains our priority now. We shifted, like I said earlier, all of our programming to digital, and we tend to work with our tenants to do that. So finding ways to highlight what they're doing and how they're adapting versus how we are has been the primary focus of our social. During Corona, with all food delivery and grocery delivery becoming a main focus, and if you looked at your credit card bill, that's all you were spending money on, we were like, look, we have 2 full grocers open at IC, we have some liquor stores that were still open, and some other businesses selling essential goods. And I think that we started figuring out how to tell those stories and how to create engagement for those businesses beyond just you can go on Mercado and order groceries from these people. At IC, you could still go. We found we benefited. We have so much space that people felt really safe shopping there. So reframing that sort of shopping experience and masking up and feeling like there was already tons of space. You didn't have to wait online outside. So finding the stories that were so relevant and so prevalent in everyone's thought processes, but telling them through the IC lens was sort of how we transitioned. But I can't say that it's super different from what we were doing before, because again, we built our social media just on telling the stories of the cool people and interesting dynamic businesses that operate at IC.
Is there anything that we didn't cover here that you think would be important to tell people about marketing during this time, or anything we didn't cover?
I almost stepped in such proverbial you-know-what in the beginning. We, on March 12th, by the way, I was sick with coronavirus, and all I could think of was, we're launching our new website today. So we spent months on this new website. Additionally, we were going live with our first ever major out-of-home campaign on March 12th. And March 12th was lockdown. So I think it's something Amanda said in a different context, which is just adjusting your expectations and being kinder to yourself about whether it's your KPIs or what you'd expected to happen. That's life, right? But it applies here as well. Best laid plans. And you have to be nimble and flexible and readjust and try to remain cognizant of POV, because I was like, we're getting this out there, we're going live, people will still walk around. I mean, I was like death grip on this campaign that I felt like was my baby, but the message was just wrong. It just wasn't right. And so understanding your point of view and always shifting that and having almost like a board of trustees that are around you that can say let's look at that in the grander context or the broader scheme, so that you don't always, you're not so focused on the KPI or the expected revenue jump, or you just shift.
And I think that is, historically a challenge with marketing versus something more quantitative like finance, where in marketing, it's this kind of, ebb and flow of quantitative versus qualitative. And I think, one, has been in such constant flux throughout the pandemic, and it's constantly changing, but I think there has been a much heavier emphasis on qualitative. And, similar to Lauren, we launched our brand new website, which was years in the making, I think right in the new year. And so we had also just started our media campaign. So we had to take all of these new analytics with a grain of salt, because it was a completely new platform for us. we were seeing crazy engagement and analytics. So in the beginning, I'm tooting my own horn, like, impressions and engagement and time on site is up 350%. But then I had to take a step back and say, counteract that with the fact that, people are also just online a lot more than they have been before. So I don't know, how much of that is valuable and how much it isn't, but I think it's something that, we're fumbling and learning and, ever growing. And I think, it's going to hold true for quite some time. So I'm interested to see how our analytics are post-pandemic.
All right, guys. Well, I want to thank our panelists, Michael, Lauren, and Amanda. A big thank you to our sponsor, Chatterson, our media partner, PropMoto, and our industry partners from across the country for supporting the conversation. Thank you for watching today. If you enjoyed the episode, please share, subscribe, or visit marketSHARE.tv for more important industry conversations and to watch past episodes. Look out for the next MarketSHARE conversation on July 29. Until next time, I'm Lauren Schram with Marino. Thank you for joining us.